Hi guys, welcome back to the Adaptive Zone podcast. My name's Matthew Boyd. I'm a physiotherapist and running coach. If you enjoyed today's episode, don't forget to like and subscribe. And if you're so inclined, share it with a friend. Today we're going to be talking with one of our athletes, my personal favorite, Janalee. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you for having me, Matt. It's a pleasure.
So we're going to be chatting a little bit about your journey with running over the last couple of years. So if you could just give us a little bit of background about how you got into running in the first place.
Yeah, thank you. I've, just to start, I was kind of explaining to my son, I'm like, I'm going to be on an interview today. And I said, and it might end up on a podcast. And he's like, oh, I hope you do end up on a podcast. He said, because then he said, I might even listen to you. And then we both laughed at what that meant out loud. So hopefully he'll start listening to me a little bit more if this ever comes to fruition. So yeah, again, thanks for having me. I started running 4 or 5 years ago, and it was out of a need. It was a bucket list item. I had a dream. I wanted to cross country ski in Norway on a particular trip where you would do like 25K a day, and they would bring your luggage from place to place to place. So in order to keep up with my cardio in the winter, I transitioned to running in the summer to then hopefully have this trip happen. And it kind of just came from there, because now I didn't even ski this winter because there's not enough snow, and I just found so much joy in running that this is probably what I'll continue to do.
Cool. So you got bitten by the running bug, and what was it that you liked about it at first that made you want to kind of get into it a bit more?
Oh, there's so much to that question. So I had people describe like that they use running to run the crazy off. So it's a place where you kind of can just decompress and to use it as, I find it almost meditative, where it's a nice way to check out for a while. And so I think that's probably what I do it for, and what will keep me continuing to do it.
Yeah, me too. Exact same reason. So as you first got into running and you were sort of enjoying the peace and quiet and the me time, what did you decide to start doing with your training? Were you like, I'm going to do certain races, or I'm going to train in a certain way? Like, or did you think I'll just go and run a few days a week and that's what I'll do? Like, how did you approach it?
Yeah. So again, I had a training goal of a 55-kilometer cross country ski race, and by race I mean Jana finishing the race was the goal, not at like with any competitive time. So and yeah, so to keep up the running in the summer, and then and running 2 to 3 days a week at that point, and and just really enjoying it. And also I always prefer forms of exercise that are outside, and so it really made that part on the list too.
All right, cool. So running is going pretty well. You're getting into it. You're enjoying it. And it sounds like you've slipped into a good routine. At some point, you reached out to me because you wanted to talk about some of the frustrations you were having with us with the running. Could you describe like what was going on at that point?
Okay, this answer is going to take a bit of time. So so I got a watch, right? Okay, because that's what cued, and then it started monitoring heart rate, because it's like, okay, well this is how you train now. You should be monitoring, you should be looking and getting on a program and dialing it up for that end goal of the 55K ski race. And so that's what I did, and my heart rate just kept coming back high, like on everything. And it didn't seem to matter what I did, that I was just running really high. Then my friend suggested that I get a chest strap, because potentially she noticed a difference in the beats from the wristwatch to with having a chest strap. So I did that, and still high. checked the connectivity of it, like making sure it's wet all the time, double checking, like checking my pulse by count, still high. And I kind of was like, well, I guess I'm just really out of shape, is what I decided. And that's what I kept telling myself. And so continued to run with friends. And again, like basically running in the red for like at the time, that's what my watch was telling me. And then I had good friends who are quite educated in this world that said you can only do that. You should only be doing that once a week, running in the red. And I'm like, well, I can't do it any other way because I'm just always in the red. So so just kind of continued on hunting down some like potential causes of why my heart rate's so high. I didn't feel, sometimes I felt the effort was there, but sometimes I really didn't. So thinking, I looked at a whole bunch of things. I looked at things like, do I need to get my thyroid checked? Is it high because it's there's a reason behind it? My magnesium level, I upped taking that to see if that would make a difference. I looked at getting more sleep and seeing if that would help. Things like hydration, caffeine. I went down like a couple months of like breathing techniques while I was running to see and that was just pointless too, but also hilarious in retrospect, because if anyone ran into me during that time frame. Anyway, so, and even so much as to like, I was like, well, maybe I'm not counting it right. I'm pretty sure I was, but getting like, I already had one, but like a little handheld sat probe to put on my finger to like just double check that I wasn't misunderstanding things. So yeah, I did do a lot of work. And again, this sounds really silly saying it like in one answer, because it seems really obsessive. No, this was over a span of a couple of years that I would have checked these things off the list. So yeah, I gave a good effort.
During that time, whenever you were running, your heart rate, as you looked at it on your watch, was kind of in the red, as you say. So it was up at the top heart rate zone, and you were under the impression that that's not where it should have been, that you should have been in a lower zone because you were running easy. Is that what was going on?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And then also learning, and understanding that there's a lot of discussion around zone 2 and bringing your heart rate down. And if you're more economic with your metabolism and your heart rate's lower, then you'll be able to go for longer, et cetera. So, really making some good attempts. And I would wax and wane because I would attempt for a good couple months, like, okay, I'm really going to do zone 2 running. But it would just be a constant like run and walk. And that would vary between like 10 meters of running and I would spike, or 100 or 200 meters of running. And then I'd have to stop and walk and bring it down. And I never, even to this day, I still wouldn't be able to run, or I still would have to walk to maintain a zone 2 with the calibrations that I would have had at that time.
That sounds so frustrating. How did that feel when you were trying to do this?
I just didn't have a good understanding because I really thought I was out of shape. And I mean, potentially that could be, but feeling like I'm building confidence with my speed now because I've had increases. But back then I also was not increasing, like looking at over the years, my running speed was the same just because I wasn't able to ever push or excel myself to actually gain speed. So,
So your sort of training runs were all at the same speed. In fact, in spite of the fact that you took up running and had been running for, it sounds like, a couple of years,
yeah,
you weren't getting any fitter as far as you could tell. You were trying to follow the heart rate zones and you couldn't do that, and you were doing all these things to try and follow them. And on top of that, you were running at the same pace on all of your runs as you always had been, so you weren't really making any progress, it sounds like.
No, and that I was very stagnated, insanely frustrated. And so I even went to a physiotherapist and just did a one-on-one and just threw questions at him for an hour, and trying to like understand my heart rate, and what I could do to bring it down, or how this could work so that I didn't have to do the run walk. What is the point of zone 2 running? And just basically vented on zone 2 running, which in hindsight, everyone, like, you could see how that could be, I guess, misunderstood or misconstrued. I really did. And to be fair, he didn't see my heart rate or graph or anything. It was just all verbal interview. So what I got from that at that point was that if I want to bring it down, I'm just going to have to run walk until it comes down. So then I left that appointment, and for another good couple months, I gave it a hard go and didn't have success with bringing it down into range.
So it wasn't changing, no matter how long you stuck at it and gave it. Yeah.
And I mean, I'm trying to reflect on that time. The other thing he said was that if I wanted to run for fun, then just run for fun. And so I probably should have listened to that, because that was good advice, I think. Not necessarily needing to always have all the techniques or advice, if that's not even the goal anyway. I'm not necessarily competitive that way, so
it doesn't sound like you are having a lot of fun, but also
no,
like it's like when we run, like, yeah, we're maybe not going to qualify for the Olympics, but we still like to get better, like a bit better.
Oh, for sure. Yeah. And
So
even just feel better about it and enjoy your time more, right?
yeah.
Run walk is not fun.
No, it sounds very frustrating. So then we spoke on the phone. What do you recall of that conversation, and then what we sort of decided to work on initially?
I remember being so done with the zone 2 that I was like, I had stopped running at the point for 3 weeks when we had the meeting, because I was like, well, it's a last ditch. I've talked to a few people. I'm like, I'm not sure what Matt's going to be able to do. But so I was a little skeptical.
Oh, okay. So what made you decide to sort of take the plunge and give it a go?
I just felt like I had nothing to lose. And because at where I was at, I certainly wasn't winning, and continuing to like zone 2 run in that like slower state. I had even had some weight gain, like wasn't a lot, but it was just enough that I felt like I was putting in too many hours at something that I wasn't having. It was even like going against my goals at the end of the day. Yeah. So that backward slide just didn't make sense unless I got advice or got on in a better direction. So yeah, I just felt like it couldn't hurt in trying one more thing and giving it an honest go. Yeah.
So what do you recall of that first month or two working with us? Like, what was different during that
Oh
time?
man. So yeah, right away, we did some fitness tests, and I just remember within under 2 weeks, you had recalibrated my heart rate zones, and like that that really has been so life-changing. It's meant so much, because now I can just run in enjoyment and not even have to look or worry about the heart rate. And it's showed significant improvements in my speed, just to be able to like train. I mean, using the same principles, but train for what my physiological body needs and or is able to do.
So once we'd adjusted the calibration on what your watch was telling you and what you were aiming for, then you could do all the things you'd been reading about, all the zone 2 trading, and all like, oh. So was it a bit like, oh, now I get it. It's not quite so horrendous as it seemed.
Oh yeah, because then it's enjoyable. Like you're actually going a speed that you're not fighting or being interrupted by the heart rate. And oh, I have to slow down again. So you can fit it into so many things. I remember finding sheets for my heart rate to try to stay within zone 2, like flipping over, not run on a long day, but flip over to like an elliptical, because then it's super it's just really, really low impact. But then again, like that really wasn't doing anything to improve my cardiovascular health. So
Yeah.
like, because it was just so not, no exertion at all. So yeah, it's been really nice to fit things in easier, whether I have kids with me or not. The zone 2 recalibration has been absolutely major.
So once we got that dialed in and you were starting to progress as the months pass, what do you remember of what we were doing that because I think you set your goal as the 10K quite early on. Is that right?
Yeah, I mean, only because I was always enjoy the long distance thing, but it didn't make sense to continue to do long distance if A, I wasn't enjoying the training of the zone 2 pre-heart rate calibration, and B, if I was just getting weight gain because it wasn't even enough for like the exertion or like physiological improvement. Um, so that's why then rather than picking a half marathon, I thought, well, let's focus on a 10K and just the goal being get faster at running. Hands down, that's what I would like to do, to learn how to do. Yeah.
And so then what do you recall of that period where we were sort of moving from just calibrating things and getting your training correctly to preparing you to do a 10K? Like, what do you remember of the training at that time?
Well, you also talked me into doing weights and weight training, and that was a
Oh,
big
yeah.
shift in my life. So thanks, but no thanks. I don't know. No, I appreciate it. I've learned a lot. I've learned a lot about my body, and how you can even kind of have some influence on how it's structured. So that's been personally huge for me too. So that piece of it was something new, and it's a big learning curve for me. But again, I mean, I definitely had gains in speed over the last year, but just overall changes in muscle tone and strength.
Yeah, cool. So you're stronger, you're getting faster. And then when did you decide, because you did a race recently, so when did you decide that it was time to go and test it out and do a race?
Yeah, so again, you kind of, it's the same where you would do like, a few just lighter runs during the week. You do intervals, and then you've got your long run. And it was in the long runs that I'm like, oh, and as soon as spring hit after weight training all winter, I'm like, oh, I'm faster. I'm potentially going to meet my goal. So I knew I was getting close, and then plunked into that one particular 10K, and indeed was able to meet my goal. So that was a real thrill.
So what was your goal?
My goal was to run 10K in under an hour, which in like previously with I've got a good friend group and all my runners, that just seemed so fast to me. Some of them can run that, and I was just like, this is not going to be possible. But I was able to meet it, I think, in a 57. So pretty thrilled.
3 minutes under.
Yeah.
Crushed it. So what now? Like, now that you're up and running, you're doing 10Ks, like what's the next challenge?
That's a hard question too, because I think I'm like, I kind of at a transition point. It's like, you're right. Now what I met my goal at faster. Now am I going to switch to maybe back to longer distance, or do I try to get a tiny bit faster, Matt? So I'm leaning towards trying to get a tiny bit faster, because I'm so close. And I think I know it's funny. I had another good friend that he's like, okay, if you just did this, he listed off like 7 things, then you can come down and get even faster. So, I might meet him in the middle and do 3 or 4 of those things,
Yeah.
and hopefully be a little bit faster. So, yeah.
Yeah, you can always go faster. It doesn't matter how fast you go.
Hopefully, yeah.
But you're in the more, I mean, fun it's maybe the right word, but at first, like from when you started with us to this first 10K, once you dial in all the foundational pieces, you can see some really good progress really quickly. And then what you start to you get this kind of diminishing returns where as you get better, you get closer to your potential. So then it gets harder to get better, but it also becomes more of a fun challenge. It's like, okay, well, last race I did about the same pace as I did the previous race. How am I going to get better? And then it's like a puzzle. Like, should I focus more on strength? Should I do more volume? Should I do more threshold? Should I do more zone two? Like, then you start to decide and play with the dials and see how you are going to actually make yourself that, 30 seconds faster or even a minute faster. It gets fun.
If you say so. No, I can understand now. I think, yeah, I'm looking forward to the challenge. It's just got to pick which one I want to do. Yeah.
Cool. Well, it's great to hear that. I mean, it sounds like your running is fun again, the way it's supposed to be, which is kind of the main thing with figuring out all the training to a place where you can enjoy it again. Do you feel like you're enjoying your running again now?
Without question. It doesn't even matter which kind of run. Aside from the interval, those ones are always hard to get out the door for. But yeah, I'll do them. But because I understand that it does make you faster. And actually, the difference is I believe it now too.
Yeah.
Versus with the zone 2 and the run walking, I couldn't believe it because I just wasn't seeing the difference. But I believe that now too. Again, the recalibration for my body was key.
Well, that's the thing. I mean, we haven't talked about it, but that if you imagine like when you're running, heart rate zones are they're on a bell curve for people. Like, so most people will, if they get buy a Garmin, they'll like sort of start using it, and the zones will be kind of roughly about right. But some people are at the top end of the bell curve, like you, and their heart rate will all their zones will be higher. It doesn't mean anything. It just means it's a higher number. So you have to calibrate accordingly. And some people are lower, right? And that's just the natural distribution of heart rates. And what I think is helpful about your story is that I've heard so many times people at the low end or the high end get frustrated with heart rate training, with zone training, and confused about why their pace and heart rate zones don't match, or why their watch is telling them they're in zone 5 all the time. Like, it's really frustrating and confusing. But that's why. It's because they need customizing to the person involved. And they probably need customizing every couple of years because, like, as you get age, they'll change a little bit. So having heart rate zones that are calibrated is really important if you're actually going to enjoy your training and get the benefits out of doing it in a more specific way, which you are now.
Yeah, thank you. And again, I was like, I just don't. I was like, what value is this conversation going to have? We kind of talked about this because I was like, are you getting into like the mom runner who works full time over 40 cohort? Because that's about the only. I'm very just a regular person who has struggled with heart rate. And I was like, well, I guess if it can help one person who is also struggling with their heart rate or zone 2 running, then that's why I'm here. And I'm so pleased that you have the services that you're offering because it is just really made a huge impact on my life.
That's awesome. No, it's a really common problem. Actually, I mean, I don't want anyone to do this, but if you go right back to one of the first episodes of this podcast I did, they were terrible. Like, I really didn't know what I was doing. But I took listener questions, and it was this exact question. It was like one of the first questions I was asked when I started a podcast was, my heart rate's always so high. What do I do? Like, I've heard that maybe 1,000 times in my like career. It's so common. So there is hope. You just need to get them calibrated. So thank you for joining us. Thank you for sharing your story. Congratulations on the 10K and good luck beating it now that you've set the bar at a more challenging level. And yeah, thanks for coming on.
Thanks for having me, Matt. And thank you to you and your team. I can't thank you enough.
Awesome.